Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are diving into a truly fascinating paradox. You know that feeling when a friend leaves you on read or a text is delayed and you suddenly feel this weird spike of panic? It's almost like your brain thinks there's a tiger hiding in the bushes waiting to pounce. Well, there's a reason for that. The truth is, we are actively navigating this modern world, a world of medical miracles, smartphones, and instant grocery delivery, using Stone Age bodies and brains. So we're going to unpack exactly how these brilliant ancient survival systems are sometimes holding us hostage today, and more importantly, what we can actually do about it. To really understand ourselves, we have to recognize that human survival has literally always been a two-front war. On the one hand, we've battled physical threats, right? Predators, brutal diseases, the elements. But on the other side, we fought this relentless war against psychological isolation. For our ancestors, surviving meant conquering both. But here's the catch. While we've largely defeated the physical threats, those psychological ones, they are still sounding 5-alarm fires in our heads today. So here is our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start with 1, our hunter-gatherer origins. Then we'll look at 2, the evolution of lifespan. From there, we pivot to the mind with 3, ostracism as social death, and 4, the pain of rejection. Finally, we'll wrap up with 5, the future of human survival. All right, let's jump right into section 1, our hunter-gatherer origins, the ancestral baseline. To really get why our brains act the way they do, we have to look back at the exact environment that forged them, the Paleolithic era. Now, humans are actually the longest-lived species in the hominid family, mostly thanks to our massive brains and our sheer adaptability. But man, for hundreds of thousands of years, early humans like Homo erectus and Neanderthals fought a daily, grueling battle against immense physical danger. And I don't just mean fighting off massive predators. Back then, a minor scrape could easily lead to a fatal infection. Plus, harsh, freezing climatic conditions meant famine was literally always around the corner. Add in high infant mortality and late weaning, and population growth was incredibly slow. To put it into perspective, the average life expectancy for a Neanderthal, just 29.4 years. Which brings us to section 2, the evolution of lifespan and how we went about defeating those physical threats. It is absolutely wild to look at this, but for millennia, human life expectancy was effectively hard stuck. From the Paleolithic era straight through the Neolithic, and honestly all the way up to the early 1900s, the global average hovered right around an incredibly low 30 years. But then, wow, look at the 21st century. We rocket straight up to 66 plus years globally, with a lot of developed nations pushing well into their 80s. That is an explosive, completely unprecedented leap in the timeline of human evolution. So, you might be wondering, how on earth did we pull this off? Well, it happened in a few major steps. First, about 10,000 years ago, we ditched the super dangerous hunter-gatherer lifestyle for settled agriculture. We also started cooking our meat, which effectively killed off deadly bacteria. Then, as we moved closer to the modern era, improved hygiene and better medical practices caused infant mortality to absolutely plummet. But the real game changer? That hit in the 20th century, with vaccines and Alexander Fleming's discovery of penicillin in 1928. That single discovery largely erased bacterial infections as an automatic death sentence. To see just how explosive this shift was in real life, let's look at Turkey as a case study. In the 1960s, the average life expectancy there was just 51.7 years. But by applying all those medical and societal advancements we literally just talked about, that number leaped to 71.2 by 2004 and hit an amazing 77.7 years by 2019. Think about that. In a single human lifetime, an entire society conquered its physical environment and essentially bought its citizens almost 3 extra decades of life. Moving on to section 3, ostracism as social death. This is where our narrative takes a major pivot. Okay, so we've essentially solved the physical threats that hunted our ancestors, right? So why do we react to a bad day at the office or being left off an email chain like we are in absolute mortal danger? Well, it comes down to this one word right here, ostracism, being excluded and ignored. According to researchers, ostracism instantly thwarts 4 fundamental human needs. It hits our need to belong, our self-esteem, our sense of control, and our sense of a meaningful existence. We are profoundly social animals. When you strip away our social connections, you are actively stripping away our psychological foundation. In fact, researchers have described indefinite ostracism as social death. And remember those Paleolithic threats we talked about earlier? Well, if you were kicked out of your hunter-gatherer tribe, you couldn't fight off predators alone. You definitely couldn't forage enough food to survive the winter alone. In ancestral times, social death was a direct, inescapable precursor to actual physical death. Our brains learned that harsh lesson, and they never, ever forgot it. Let's dive into Section 4, the pain of rejection, and our shared biological alarm system. When scientists put people into MRI scanners and subjected them to social exclusion, even just from a super simple virtual ball tossing game, they noticed something absolutely incredible. A region of the brain called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, or the DACC, lit up like a Christmas tree. Why does that matter? Because that is the exact same region of the brain that processes physical injuries. To your brain, a broken bone and a broken heart are literally processed by the exact same neural hardware. No way, right? But it's true. To really make this visceral, let's look at 2 real anecdotes from a psychological study where participants were asked to recall past pain. On the left, we have a participant recalling a brutal football tackle. It resulted in a broken fibula, surgical plates, and 4 agonizing months of rehab. Total physical agony. On the right, a participant recalls an 8th grade betrayal where friends passed around a hateful, mocking picture of her. That caused lasting depression and a lifelong inability to trust. Both hurt, for sure, but the study revealed a massive difference in how we process them over time. What makes social pain so uniquely devastating is how we remember it. Even though they feel identical in the moment, the person with the broken leg couldn't feel that physical pain years later. But the person who experienced that 8th grade betrayal, they felt the psychological pain wash over them all over again, just by writing about it. Social pain can be actively re-experienced. And incredibly, because the brain pathways overlap so much, studies show that taking an over-the-counter physical painkiller like acetaminophen can actually numb the distress of being socially rejected. Let that sink in for a second. Because the stakes of social exclusion were literally life and death for our ancestors, humans evolved a crude, highly hypersensitive ostracism detection system. Think about it like a smoke detector. It's way better for your smoke detector to go off just because you burnt your toast than for it to stay totally silent while your entire house burns down. Evolutionary psychologists call this error management theory. Our brains are hardwired to over-detect rejection so we don't accidentally get kicked out of the tribe. And that is exactly why someone not making eye contact with you on the street or a friend delaying a text message can completely ruin your mood. When that hypersensitive alarm goes off, it forces us into these adaptive responses originally designed to ensure our survival. We desperately start seeking immediate explanations for why we are being ignored. We focus all of our energy on strategies for re-inclusion. We actually become way more compliant to social influence tactics, and we show high interest in joining new groups. Heck, our memory for social cues even sharpens. Basically, your brain is practically screaming, get back into the group right now or you're going to freeze to death. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the future of human survival and bridging the body and mind. As we look forward toward 2050 and 2100, we are heading straight into an era of unprecedented longevity. In developed nations like Japan, Switzerland, and Spain, average life expectancies are projected to push firmly into the 90s. We are continuously conquering the physical limits of the human body. In fact, researchers theorize that the absolute upper limit of the human lifespan, based on cellular biology, might actually be around 122 years. Thanks to advanced gene therapy in medicine, we are effectively mastering our physical environment. But we really have to ask, what about our psychological environment? We are facing a profound modern mismatch. On one hand, we have this unprecedented physical longevity. We're supported by secure food sources, vaccines, and advanced medicine. But on the other hand, we have this intense psychological vulnerability. We're living nearly a century, but we're doing it with brains that are still wired for the Paleolithic era. And here is the truly scary part. Chronic social isolation in the modern world actually mimics the physical damage of chronic stress, significantly raising our risk for serious health problems. So, the absolutely crucial point you should take away from this explainer is this. We simply cannot survive on physical health alone. Treating our social connections as if they're just optional luxuries is biologically dangerous. Isolation is a very real biological threat, not just a sad feeling. But hey, the good news is we actually can heal the Stone Age brain. Evidence-based research shows us how to soothe our ancient evolutionary alarms. Even minor positive social interactions can blunt the pain of rejection. If you're feeling ostracized, engaging in hobbies or activities that restore your sense of control can completely refortify your mental state. During times of physical isolation, relying on community groups or even parasocial bonds like hanging out with your favorite explainer show or TV characters can trick your brain into feeling safe again. The most important step? Simply recognizing that social pain isn't a weakness, it's just your ancient, helpful survival alarm doing exactly what it was built to do. I'm going to leave you with this final thought to reflect on. As science and technology continue to extend our physical lifespans to unprecedented, almost unimaginable lengths, how will you protect the fragile social bonds your Stone Age brain still absolutely requires to survive? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a whole new perspective on your incredible ancient brain.